Tonight, I wanted to offer just some very simple encouragement about how we work with our minds. There's a meme, I think it started out as an article on The Onion years ago, but it shows a little kitten, adorable kitten, and the caption is, "Kitten thinks of nothing but murder all day." And the first time I saw this, I laughed, partly because it seems so incongruent, but partly because we know it's true, right? We know that these beautiful, adorable, gentle little animals, they have this other kind of thirst. Right? And we don't necessarily satisfy that. If it's a house cat, that house cat doesn't murder all day. It does something else. And so the thing that drives that animal, that inner voice, isn't reflected in the behavior that we see. Like so many things, it's funny because it's true. This pops up every once in a while. I don't know why. And whenever it does, I think the natural question, the natural response is to ask, what do I think about all day? What's that thing that maybe I'm not showing? That thing that isn't so pretty to me or to someone else if they knew. I don't think that you think about murder all day, probably. But I'm confident that you have something, or maybe a few things that you hold, that you carry with you most of the time. For a lot of people, the first thing that comes to mind is a kind of feeling. Anxiety or fear, anger, resentment, regret, sadness. A feeling that permeates our experience and then that is accompanied by the thought, I don't want to feel this way. I shouldn't feel this way. For some of us, what comes to mind is something more concrete, easier to describe. It's a fantasy, it's a memory, it's a what if. It's a narrative that somehow never quite goes quiet. We may not notice it all the time, we may not see it when we're driving, but then especially when we sit in this way, it becomes obvious that it was always there, that it has been there all day, all week, all month. That feeling, that thought, that storyline. And then what happens, and I know it happens because not only have I experienced it, but because this is one of the things that people want to talk with me about the most. What happens is we experience those thoughts that don't seem like the wisest thoughts, or the most compassionate thoughts, or the most wholesome thoughts, or the most evolved thoughts. And then because we're involved in this practice that stakes so much on wisdom and so much on compassion and so much on clarity, we experience those thoughts and then we think, I should not think this. I should not feel this. Something is wrong. And we imagine that cat that thinks of nothing but murder all day is a hypocrite. for acting like one thing but thinking another. Because here I am, I'm a Buddhist. I'm practicing meditation, I'm chanting about compassion, and then I go to work and there's this person who's always there, and sometimes I just want to punch him in the face. So I'm failing, or Buddhism is failing. The system is broken, or I am. And now we're not just thinking these thoughts, we're thinking this other more powerful thought about how things are so wrong. And then we try to address it. We turn to teachings like the Eightfold Path, which speak of right thought. We think, well, there must be a right thing to think. When I'm in times of distress, when I'm in times of ease, when I'm sitting the way that we sit, I should be thinking compassionate thoughts, generous thoughts, wise thoughts. I should be seeing through something, not just watching my own stuff rise to the top over and over and over again. The encouragement that I want to offer is to say, it's okay. You can decide that you're going to think right thoughts, but that isn't how thoughts work. I can take up, for example, the idea that I love everyone. I can say it, I can think it, I can chant it to myself, I can carry it around like a rock in my pocket. Rub it. I love everyone because I want to love everyone. I want it to be true. But as long as it isn't true, I'm not really thinking that thought. I'm trying on a thought, and that thought feels like a lie. Does this mean there's nothing to be done? No, it doesn't. It just means we have to be honest. First, about what it is that we're thinking, what it is that we're feeling, what it is that we're experiencing. We have to make space for that. Allow for that. Or else our whole lives are spent pushing against our own minds. It's exhausting and it's futile, and it has nothing to do with this path. The image that comes to mind for me is if you have a pain in your body, one that isn't healing, maybe never will. You can fight that. And in a way, it's natural too, because we think we aren't supposed to feel that way. Things aren't supposed to hurt all the time. And so most people faced with that kind of injury, that kind of whatever it is that causes it, will spend a period resisting it, being angry at it, noticing it to the degree that it always seems just next to the center of everything else that's happening. We're talking to someone, but we're also staring at that discomfort. We're watching TV, but we're staring at that discomfort all the time. That's one way. And again, it's exhausting. The other way, which is paradoxically the easier way and the harder way, is to learn to simply notice it and say, oh, there's that again. There it is. It would be nice if it weren't here, but it's here. In the same way, when we do this practice, and if you've experienced sesshin, where you're sitting all day for a week or more, you almost certainly have this experience of diving deep into a particular thought, a particular memory, a particular fantasy. Mostly what we do is we either embrace it, we indulge it, or we try to push it away and say, no, 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 no. I'm on a retreat. I can't think this way. Either one of those responses leads to that thought being at the center of your experience for days. Only option C gives it the space to breathe, which is that when it pops up, you say to yourself, oh, there it is. There's that. There's that story. Huh. No surprise. Everything we do, and we've talked about this together in 1,000 different ways, circles back to our deep, deep, deep drive to measure what it is that we're doing, to measure the quality of it. Why would I invest in this practice? Why would I sit this way for so long and join in a community for so long if it's not going to change the set of eyes that I have in my head? So that I actually see the world differently. What's the point? We all think this way to some degree. And so when we have that angry thought, when we have that obsessive thought, we think, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to get out of this. I mentioned before that we can try to think in a different way and it can become a lie. But I want to offer one other approach, which is that in the same way that we can hold the thoughts lightly, and I know that's easier said than done, but in the same way that we can notice the thoughts and just give them space, we can also take up the practice of entertaining thoughts that are new. If I try to convince myself that I love everyone, without that naturally arising, I'm going to be at odds with myself. But if I carry around the thought, may all beings be free from suffering, there's nothing there to believe. Not exactly. I don't have to convince myself that I'm a different kind of person. I just have to entertain the thought of it. I can hold for a moment the feeling of that aspiration, of that wish. May all beings be free from suffering. There's no lie because there's no story. Just a kind of question for us to enter. So I offer that up, that simple thing, time tested. When we feel trapped by the way our mind naturally works, when we feel disappointed by how our mind naturally works, we can kind of smile at that. We can smile at our own desire to make it otherwise. And then we can offer up a wish to the world that no one would have that experience, including me, but not just me. Because in that offering, in that wish, is the acknowledgement that everyone else is doing the same thing. That this is what it is to be alive. This is what it is to be human. That the person you meet on the street also is holding a thought they do not want to hold. They are guided by a feeling they wish they could be, that they could put down. Every single one of them. It all comes back to that. Every time. No matter how we talk about it. No matter what angle we choose. It comes back to that recognition. And that's where I'll stop.